Here in TESS, these domains that we investigate can be summarized in terms of biological, social, and psychological domains. And importantly, we also focus on the important part of children's development. It's the children's family, school, and peer relations. The data collection is rather comprehensive, so the children are assessed during 4 hours at the university through means of a semi-psychiatric psychiatric interviews, where both children and their parents participate. In addition, we also observe the children and the parents in the lab. The children are tested, and we objectively assess their BMI, physical activity, and sleep. And we also collect information from school and preschool teachers. And the study can be also linked to Norwegian registry data. So here I would like to draw on some experience with the TESS study and how can how this can underscore the importance of a new guide study. We all know that children's development is multidetermined, and it also happens with the reciprocal interaction with child's environment. So we need to assess the development longitudinally over time. And here is an example of a study where we assess the reciprocal interactions between child problem behavior and conflicted relationship with their teacher in preschool and school from the age from 4 to 12 years old. And due to the longitudinal design, we were able to assess the within person, the intra-individual processes of children's development. And that's really a big asset in comparison to traditional structural equations modeling, where we can really look what happens on the intra-individual level. But we were then interested, is it a general finding, or can we also more generalize to other populations and contexts? So we compared our findings with USA NICHD study, but we faced several challenges. And one of these was the measurements. Even though both studies used the same measurements, they were not identical. There were different lengths or versions of the measurements. So we needed to make quite some efforts to harmonize the data. And we faced similar challenges in terms of other predictors and covariates. And there were also some other challenges related to the age period, because although the children were collected or assessed at similar ages, the children were not consistently assessed throughout the follow-up, so there was different timing and different periods when the children were assessed. So if we then find some differences between the two countries, it's very difficult to ascertain what can the different results be a result of. So therefore, we need a study which is already harmonized from the beginning of and uses standardized measures. I know that other longitudinal studies, which Gary earlier mentioned, they face similar challenges because the measurements are not directly comparable. Is that in addition to collecting individual data across lifetime, we also need to collect data in different cohorts to better understand cohort effects. So in a recent TESS study, we found no reciprocal effects between adolescent social media use and symptoms of anxiety and depression. And this finding can be illustrated on the top right corner. However, at the cohort level, more use of social media and screen may also be linked to worse mental health, for example, through less physical contact as time goes, more social isolation, which might then lead to worse mental health outcomes. However, we might not observe the same patterns at the individual level, because we can imagine that those who use more social media might also have more physical contact with peers and thereby not worse mental health. So we need to disentangle the cohort and the individual effects of these associations. So As for the data needs, we all know that there is a replication crisis in psychological research, but also in medicine and medicine and social science, where about 50% of studies are not being replicated. So remedy is to use standardized, harmonized measures with enough large and representative samples. And we also need to pay attention to the context. We all know that children's development is often happens with reciprocal exchanges with different environments and different domains of the environment. So we need longitudinal data to better understand the impact of the different predictors. And we also need data that can ascertain changes between generations. And to disentangle the reciprocal effects within person or the intra-individual change, we also need to assess data at least at 3 time points. And such longitudinal measurements and findings can better help us to understand the direction of the effects, the size of the effects, and bring us closer to understanding causality when observing longitudinal change. Representative samples is also a large challenge. I've recently talked to my colleagues in Norway who work with the gender and generation program study, and it's a large challenge to have enough power and large enough sample, including the minorities, immigrants, and the vulnerable populations. This is also a challenge for the TESS study and for the mother and a child cohort, birth cohort in Norway. So as society develops rapidly, children develop as well, we need a new cohort. Currently, there is no child birth cohort in Norway because there has been a massive increase in social media and screen use. And to assess how these impact the development, we really need to get data on this. And also, as the world is changing with wars and the recent pandemic, if we have these data at hand, we can better understand how different contexts impact on children's development. For example, how different school closures during the COVID pandemic could have impacted on children outcomes at the different countries. So we need a new data cohort infrastructure which could be comparable between countries, where we'll be using the same cohort age period and spacing of data collection.